Hi, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll show you how to crochet these swim rings that I designed for my no-sew cat. If you haven't seen the cat tutorial yet, I've posted it separately and I'll link it in the description below. Although the swim rings were designed specifically for the cats, I think they also work really well as standalone pieces or even as keychains. Personally, I'm a big fan of the donut one. All of the rings are completely no-sew, just like the cat, and they're all made using a very similar construction, with only a few small differences between them. I'll go through each version step by step. For materials, you'll just need your crochet hook, ideally some DK weight yarn, stuffing, and optionally a pair of small safety eyes for the duck version. So let's get started. We'll begin with the donut version. Start by chaining 28. This pattern also works with more or fewer stitches. However, I chose 28 chains so that the donut fits nicely around the cat's body. You can change the stitch count, although you may need to make some adjustments to the pattern to maintain a similar shape. Once you've chained 28, join the chain with a slip stitch into the first chain to form a loop. The slip stitch itself does not count as a stitch. From here on, we'll be working in continuous rounds, so we'll be crocheting in a spiral. Round 1 is simply 28 single crochets, one in each chain around. In some other tutorials, I've seen people start with increases right away, but I personally prefer working a full round of 28 single crochets first. It creates a sturdier and easier to handle base for the upcoming rounds, and it also helps hide the seam line a little better. The section we are making right now will eventually become the bottom of the inner part of the donut, so having this foundation round gives the finished piece a cleaner look. Now we're done with round 1, and we should still have 28 stitches in total. In round 2, we continue by working one single crochet and one increase repeated 14 times. So just repeat single crochet, increase all the way around. After doing so, your stitch count should be 42. In the next round, work 2 single crochets and then an increase, repeated 14 times all around. This will bring you to a total of 56 stitches. Now we are at the outer part of the donut. We've reached the maximum width. We continue by working 2 rounds of 56 stitches all the way around. I recommend using a stitch marker here, as it makes life much easier and you won't have to count up to 56 in every round. Perfect. Now we're done with the bottom part of the donut and we'll move on to the glazing. For that, change your yarn color. I usually do this by completing the last stitch of the previous round with the new color. So basically I pull up the loops of my single crochet, but for the final yarn over I use the pink yarn instead. This creates a seamless color transition. Now that we've changed color, work 3 additional rounds of 56 single crochets. Now that we are done with the 3 straight rounds, you can already see how the donut starts shaping upwards, just like we want it to. To bring it back in toward the center, we start decreasing now. Work 2 single crochets and then a decrease, repeated 14 times all around. Your total stitch count should now be 42. In the next round, we decrease even more. Work 1 single crochet and 1 decrease repeated 14 times all around until you reach 28 stitches. Great, we've made it back to the center and our work is starting to look like a donut now. Now we need to create some depth. The inner part needs a bit of height so the donut shapes nicely. For that, simply work 3 rounds of 28 single crochets all the way around. Now we're done with those 3 rounds of 28 stitches, and you can see we've created something that looks a bit like a tunnel. This tunnel will be pushed inward, so it goes through the donut hole. As you can see, the main part of our donut is done now. We just need to close it. To close the donut, I fold it so that the last stitch of my final round aligns with the first stitch of my first round. Then, using the donut base color, I connect the 2 layers with slip stitches all the way around. I do this by inserting my hook through the front loop of my donut base and through the back loop of the glazing layer, or the front loop, depending on your perspective. So basically, you're only going through 1 loop of each layer. I prefer working my slip stitches from the bottom since I find it a bit easier than working through the hole from the top. This step generally takes a bit of patience and can be a little tricky, especially at the beginning, so take your time and slowly work 28 slip stitches. Make sure to take breaks in between to add stuffing. It's much easier to stuff it gradually because once everything is closed, it can be harder to push stuffing through a small opening. So I like to stuff as I go. When you reach the last few stitches, make sure to stuff your donut firmly before closing it completely. After closing, weave in the ends using either your yarn needle or your hook. And now you're done with the donut. The only thing left is the finishing touches. For that, I use a yarn needle to add some sprinkles in 3 different colors. I basically just add random little lines that are about 2 stitches long, trying to keep the colors fairly balanced. And that's it, your donut is done. Let's move on to the second version, the swim duck. This one is very similar up to a certain point. Start exactly the same way as with the donut. Chain 28, then join it into a loop, work 28 single crochets, then a round of 1 single crochet and 1 increase repeated all the way around, followed by a round of 2 single crochets and 1 increase repeated all the way around. And after that, work 5 rounds of 56 single crochets. So for this version, do not change the yarn color. After that, we reach the point where the pattern starts to differ. While on a donut, we would have started decreasing evenly here, instead work 2 single crochets and 1 decrease repeated 6 times, so basically almost halfway through the round. Then, instead of continuing normally, skip 3 stitches and chain 3 instead. After that, continue with 1 decrease and 2 single crochets, repeated 6 times. At the end of the round, there should be 5 stitches remaining. Work 1 decrease and 3 single crochets. You should now reach a total of 43 stitches. In the next round, continue with decreases. Work 1 decrease and then 1 single crochet and 1 decrease repeated 14 times, so all the way around. Your last 2 stitches will be a decrease, and you should end up back at 28 stitches in total. From here on, the pattern is the same as for the donut again. Work 3 rounds of 28 single crochets all the way around. And then close the shape. Refer back to the donut instructions for details on how to close it. So now we have this base ring in yellow with a small hole at the top. This is where the head of the duck will go. Attach your yarn in the stitch shown in the top left corner. I've added a visual on screen that should help you identify the correct starting stitch. Now increase 6 times. There should be 6 stitches, 3 coming from the chain space and 3 from the stitches you skipped earlier. Into these stitches we work increases all the way around. Next, work 1 single crochet and 1 increase, repeated 6 times, until you reach a total of 18 stitches. For the next round, work 2 single crochets and 1 increase, repeated 6 times. You should now have 24 stitches. Now work 24 single crochets all the way around. And now in the next round, things get a bit more interesting, as we'll add the beak. First, work 17 single crochets. Then switch to your beak color. I do this by completing the 17th stitch with the new color, so the final yarn over is done with the beak yarn. Then work an increase by placing 3 single crochets into the next 2 stitches, so essentially 3 stitches into 1 stitch. Work only in the front loop, the loop facing you, as this helps push and shape the beak outward. Then switch back to your duck body color and finish the round with 5 single crochets. For the next round, work 17 single crochets. Then switch to the beak color again. Work 6 single crochets into the back loop only. Then switch back to the main color and complete the round with 5 single crochets. In the next round, we start finishing the beak. Work 17 single crochets. Then change color again. And single crochet 3 stitches together in the back loop only. Switch back to the main color and finish the round with 5 single crochets. In the next 2 rounds, simply work 24 single crochets all the way around. Now that we've completed those 2 rounds of 24 single crochets, we start decreasing. Work 2 single crochets and decrease 6 times. You should now have a total stitch count of 18. For the next round, work 1 single crochet and 1 decrease, repeated 6 times, bringing you down to 12 stitches in total. Now we can add the safety eyes. This is optional. You can also skip this step or sew on eyes instead. I place my safety eyes between round 8 and 9 of the duck head, right next to the beak and slightly above the upper part of it. Now it's time to stuff the head. Make sure to stuff it firmly, and before fully closing it, add a bit more stuffing so it holds its shape well. To close the head, work 6 decreases. To close the head completely, I use a yarn needle and insert it through the front loop of each stitch all the way around. Then I pull the opening tight to close it. Next, I add a few details. I place a stitch on both the left and right side of the beak to slightly tighten that area, which helps make the beak look a bit flatter and more defined. Then I like to gently squish the head a little so it sits closer to the ring and looks a bit cuter. To do that, I add a few stitches at the neck area and sew it closer to the ring. Of course, this is all optional. You can also just weave in the ends with a yarn needle or your hook and leave it as it is. After adding the finishing touches, our duck ring is now done. Last but not least, let's continue with the life ring. This one is a bit different compared to the other 2 versions, since we can't increase and decrease in the same way. We need to make sure the stitch count of each color stripe stays proportional. To start, chain 28 as with the other versions. Use your main color, so not white. Then create a loop by connecting the last chain to the first chain with a slip stitch. Then work 4 single crochets in your main color along the chain. Now here's where things change. Instead of continuing in just one color, finish your 4th single crochet in the main color with white yarn. So the final yarn over is done with white. And then continue with 3 single crochets in white. Then switch back to the main color and repeat. So you work 4 single crochets in your main color and 3 single crochets in white. Repeat it 4 times all the way around. Your total stitch count should still be 28. For the next round, we start increasing, but not in the usual way. First, work a single crochet, then 2 increases, then a single crochet. Then switch to white yarn and work a single crochet, an increase, and a single crochet. Keep repeating this sequence all the way around, so you complete this pattern 4 times. In the next round, we continue increasing again. Work 1 single crochet, 1 increase, two single crochets, one increase, and 1 single crochet. Then switch to white yarn and work 1 single crochet, 1 increase, and 2 single crochets. Repeat this pattern around the whole round 4 times until you reach the end. After this round, each main color section should have 8 stitches and each white section should have 5 stitches. That brings us to a total stitch count of 52. In the next 5 rounds, work 52 single crochets all the way around, switching yarn color for each section as you go. Great! Now we are done with the 5 rounds of 52 single crochets. We can now start shaping it back inward, so we'll begin decreasing again. For the decreases, we basically reverse what we did when increasing. Starting in your main color, work 1 single crochet, a decrease, 2 single crochets, another decrease, and a single crochet. Then switch to the white yarn and work a single crochet, a decrease, and 2 single crochets. Continue repeating that sequence until you get back to the beginning of the round. By the end, you'll have worked through all 4 color sections. For the next round, we'll decrease once more. Starting in your main color, work a single crochet, 2 decreases, and a single crochet. Then switch to white and work a single crochet, a decrease, and a single crochet. Repeat this sequence for each color section until you reach the start of the round again. At this point, you should be back down to 28 stitches in total. Each main color section should now have 4 stitches, while each white section should have 3 stitches. The next 3 rounds are nice and simple. Just work 28 single crochets all the way around, switching colors as you go to maintain the stripe pattern. Now we're done with those 3 rounds of 28 stitches, and the center section is starting to look like a tunnel again. At this point, the main part of the ring is finished, and all that's left is stuffing and closing it. For detailed instructions on that process, you can refer back to the donut section, since the construction is exactly the same. We close the ring with 28 slip stitches while gradually adding stuffing, and then weave in the ends once everything is closed. This version doesn't need any additional finishing touches, so we are already done with the final ring. It looks super cute in blue as well. And that's all 3 swim ring versions finished. You can use them on their own, turn them into keychains, or pair them with the no-sew cat from my separate tutorial so it can sit inside the ring. And with that, we've reached the end of this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed crocheting along with me. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now!